How do you get your brand ahead of others? Like, how do we stand out a little?
I think it comes back to authenticity. I think a lot of people and companies, whether it's a kind of a faceless corporation or it's a personal brand and you don't even have a logo, you just use your face to represent yourself. I think a lot of brands out there try really hard to not be themselves. You don't always have to follow what your competition is doing.
All right, welcome back to the Witz Podcast. Once again, we have a very special guest, Mr. Nick Mcgraw, who is an entrepreneur helping startups build amazing brands that stand out effectively, connecting them with their audience. He specializes in identity design, branding, with a key focus for reaching your ideal clients and building lasting relationships. He works very closely with you to create timeless brands and deliver effective advice to reach your business goals. And today we're going to talk about you being a young entrepreneur, or what we call the next generation entrepreneur, and just some great advice around branding and vision and design and things to do when it comes down to really being authentic with your brand and communicating that message out to the masses. So Nick, I'm really excited to have this conversation. Welcome to the show. Why don't we start with a little bit of an introduction? Like, who are you? A little bit about your background. What's your big idea? What are you doing?
Sure. So I've been a graphic designer for a few years now, but it's only been recently that I've specialized in branding, and specifically not what I do, but who I want to help is way more important to me. I love entrepreneurs. I love the idea of entrepreneurship. I love the entrepreneurial journey that people like you and I find ourselves on. Mm-hmm. It's every single one of us could write our own book at the end of this. Mm-hmm. And so I'm addicted to entrepreneurs, every one of the challenges that they face, all of their very different, specific, unique journeys to them. So I love talking to people and I love helping them. And I find there's a lot of great entrepreneurs out there with great ideas that if they only had a little bit of help in executing it, and that might be starting it off, that might be somewhere in the middle, that might be finessing it, but I try to bring the insight that I have in branding and design to help them build the best brand that they can.
So that's why you said in entrepreneurship, which is, entrepreneurship is almost an identity, right?
Oh, yeah.
I think, the word brand is a word that's thrown around, obviously, in the world of marketing,
Tons.
but let's explore that a little more. Sure. So, how important is it to have a brand? What is a brand today? I mean, let's start with that question.
So loosely, I think, not to be too pretentious about it, because I'm going to go bring my designer clause out now, Greg.
Go for it.
I think the term brand and branding, they're kind of loosely interchanged, right? Being a brand means that you have an emotional connection, or at least you elicit an emotional response from the people who like you. So your fans, these aren't just followers and customers, you have fans. Apple doesn't just have customers. Customers don't line up for 6 days and nights with their sleeping bags around the corner of the store to get the new iPhone. Fans do that, okay? Fans don't sit online in a queue waiting as their cart is filled up for the sale to come online. Fans are the ones doing that. Those aren't things that customers do. Customers are one-time transactions. So what brands do is they build a base of fans, a base of loyal fans, kind of like a rock band does. Mm-hmm. Rock bands don't have customers. They don't have clients. They have fans who fill their
fans
stadiums.
Buy their merchandise,
Exactly.
Right?
Buy their records, talk about their records, tell their friends about their records. This is what fans do. Fans make more fans for you if you are building your brand properly. So the best thing that any brand can do, whether they've been in the game for a long time or they're just starting out, anyone who's just trying to build their own image, trying to build their own brand, is make fans as quickly as possible. How do you do that? There's a million ways you can do that.
Yeah, that was going to be my next question, right? So I think that's the $1 million question.
What a segue.
Right? Like, how do you build a fan? And I think in the world of social media that we're living in today, I think, people blur those lines between, call it followers, likes, and fans. And, I like where you're going with this. So define fan for me a little more, and how do we get one?
So
how do we get, thousands and thousands of them?
So there's this theory that you can do well with just 1,000 true fans, mm-hmm. right? If you had just 1,000 true fans, right? And they could be literally, we could dumb it down to say 1,000 followers on Instagram or 1,000 followers on TikTok. You can have a very small fan base. And if they were truly loyal and they always loved everything you put out as content, they always loved every offer you came out with, every course, everything that could make you money, if they always shouted about it and they always told their friends and made you more fans, if you had just a body of 1,000 true fans, and I don't know, they spent $100 a year on you. You do the math. You quickly have a very livable way of life, right? With your 1,000 true fans. You don't need 2 million. You don't need 8 billion of us to all be your fans. as a brand, you'll never sell to the entire world. The biggest brands on earth don't sell to the entire world. Amazon doesn't have 8 billion customers, right? Starbucks, right? They don't have 8 billion customers. You can't be even the world's biggest brands don't sell to the entire
I would
world.
push back a little bit on that because you comparing Apple to Amazon, for example, right?
Sure.
I mean, Apple has fans.
They do.
I did a lot of work in the Apple world from 2004 to 2014. Ooh. We were highly involved with them, the industry, specifically from an education and training standpoint. And I was actually chatting about this the other day. I mean, people have the Apple logo tattooed on them.
Yeah,
so it wasn't just the fact that people lined up for their iPhone, because now you're factoring in, early adopters, people that want to be first, people that, yes, they are fan-based around the product. In fact, Kwame and I were talking today, the first thing we said was like, hey, Apple Day today. Right? You said it, right? You're like, you phones, you computers, you this, like you're in the know, right? And just for everyone else on audio, Kwame is the handsome devil standing behind the camera. But Amazon, I don't think people are fans of Amazon. I think people actually have this sort of love-hate relationship with Amazon, right? It's kind of like this evil mistress that you have, which is you don't want to get suckered into it, but you do. And what they do is they're actually selling convenience. Right, so they're dialing into people's primitive need to have things now, instant gratification. Why wait?
It's funny that you bring that up, because a quick little, I guess you could say, like little litmus test we could do here is I could mention, and I don't know your favorite brands, Greg, but I bet I could mention a few brands.
Let's go,
and let's see what kind of emotion. So if I say.
Apple. Start with Apple.
Okay, go ahead.
Right?
Apple. I know you love them.
Love
but
Apple.
You've already told me that.
Yes.
Right?
Okay.
So if I say Starbucks.
Starbucks? Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah, you see there's the 50-50. I don't get the whole coffee culture.
Sure.
Right?
Okay.
So,
but there's plenty who do, and I've
right,
tried that test with others.
Right. And
or McDonald's.
Right. McDonald's also a little bit of
people tend to either, like you said, love or hate it, but the ones who love it can't get enough.
Yeah, we had McDonald's this weekend with the kids, and Monopoly came out, and I got all excited. And
I'm so stoked for Monopoly.
Right.
This is a thing that I never win, but I love doing it.
Right. I'm a fan of McDonald's.
So
but what's great about McDonald's is you know what you get. Like that's
true.
the consistency of branding, right?
Right, absolutely.
Okay.
So let's try one where you might hate them.
Okay.
So like for me, anyone who says Air Canada, I'm like, ugh, not you again. Yeah. Like these brands have they're able to get an emotional response out of us, right? And that is that tether of fan to brand.
Okay, let me ask you this question.
Sure.
Would you still have that saying, ugh, about Air Canada if you had never actually flown on one of their flights or experienced their service?
No, because I have experienced their service,
right,
and I know how badly they've hurt me before.
Right. So, and I have people with the opposite story. Air Canada was great in this particular aspect.
Okay.
And I know this guy. He works in the Washington Reagan National Airport. Air Canada, best dude. Right. In fact, there's a hashtag goes out on Twitter. I think it's called Brent Saves the Day Again.
Oh.
Right. And he's got a brand. He's got a real strong brand, and I don't think Air Canada actually recognizes the value of his brand, which now broaches the topic of the company having a brand is one thing, right? But to elicit that emotional response, which I think we were just defining in two ways. One, because I've experienced them, but two, because this is what the brand stands for, the imagery, what they put out to the world, but versus the identity of the individuals within the organization, right? I think if you go to any of these big organizations like an Apple, right? People that work at Apple are fans themselves.
They love it. Yeah,
right.
Absolutely.
People that work at Amazon, I don't know if there's so much. Actually, I see some of their commercials. Their commercials look like people love working there.
So I'm sure they don't love everything about Amazon too. There's pros and cons to everything, but you're right. It's the image that these brands, whether they're big like the ones we mentioned, or someone who's just starting out trying to be a personal brand, it's what you're putting out there to the world as your values, what you value.
So is that one of the ways to gain fans, is really to communicate your values?
Absolutely. There's no real formula for it, but any decent brand out there, whether they're a personal brand, solopreneur, a serial entrepreneur with a bunch of different labels, a bunch of different products that they're selling, or a massive brand like Starbucks or Amazon, typically you'll have somewhere between 4 and 6 values that you really stick to, like your core pillars of who you are. And those are the things that you keep putting out there to the world in the form of your content, in the form of your messaging, your advertising, all that stuff. Your values need to show up all the time and all the stuff you pump out there into the world. And the way you build fans is you get in front of the right audience who have the exact same values you do. So when you map your values to someone else who likes the same things, instantly you have a fan, right? And if you keep doing that, you generate your fan base, you generate your loyal fans.
Yeah. So, I mean, any extra things we can do? I mean, I like to think I put out a lot of content around my value and stuff, but, it's hard. It's hard to capture that audience. Or here's the more specific question. There's a lot of brands in quotations out there.
Oh, yeah.
How do you get your brand ahead of others? Like, how do we stand out a little?
I think one of the best ways to do that, and I keep hearing this over and over again, and you've probably seen it, and it feels like we're beating a dead horse at this point, but a lot of people don't get it, and I think it comes back to authenticity. I think a lot of people and companies, whether it's a kind of a faceless corporation or it's a personal brand, and you don't even have a logo, you just use your face to represent yourself. I think a lot of brands out there try really hard to not be themselves. And I don't know why. I don't know why that is. I don't know why I keep seeing some of the same mistakes over and over again of people just selling this course because someone else is selling. I have to come up with an ebook because this guy over here did it. You don't always have to follow what your competition is doing. I think competitive research is smart. Being prepared is always great. But I see a lot of people just going against the grain of who they are. They're not being themselves, right? Mm-hmm. And that's all I've ever tried to do, even in like my own content and in my own personal branding. All I've ever tried to do is deliver my message the way I would and not be anybody else. And I know you do the same. You put out your message the way Greg would. You try to, right?
Yeah.
And
sometimes I offend people, but they can.
Well, I mean, those aren't your fan base, right? They're not gonna shout your message from the rooftops.
Fans could be upset with you every once in a while.
That's true. That's right. If you ever go off message or off value or off brand or whatever, sure, they can be offended and they can be let down and disappointed by what you're doing. A great example of this would be when we talked about like a rock band, like a rock star, when they have never, ever, ever been political in their life and all of a sudden they go political. Mm-hmm. Like all of a sudden they're like endorsing a candidate or they're talking about get out and vote. It's like you've been a hairband for 30 years and now you're telling, this is not making me comfortable. It's making me uncomfortable now. So now you're going off brand. You're not doing what I know you for and now you're disappointing me and now you're scaring me. You're going down a road I can't follow you.
Let's go for the rock band analogy.
Sure.
Right? Sure. People mature and grow. Businesses mature and grow. Individuals, businesses start to develop different needs, right? As that brand starts to build, there's a responsibility that comes with it, which is we now need to basically employ people and hire people, and you become responsible for people's income and stuff. So, I think, in best intentions, people want to remain authentic, but do you think sometimes the machine of business forces people to compromise that?
I think you're right. I think that, let's go back to like our favorite, which is Apple. Mm-hmm. If Apple stayed the same and just did the same stuff over and over again and just stuck to what they know, they would have never released the iPhone. Yeah. We would have never had all these different generations of iPhone.
But Apple's a unicorn, and Simon Sinek talks about this the best with the golden circle of why, which is Apple's original position, what holds their value together is to think differently.
Yeah, break the status quo.
Right, break the status quo. That was their first advertisements, and that's been their marketing ever since, and that's the consistency of it now, to think differently, right? Which takes on a various forms, which is where Steve Jobs stood up in, when was it, in the mid-2000s, forget the exact year, where he was like, we're not a computer company.
No.
Right? This is why we're making phones.
That's right.
This is why we're making, iPads, right? Eventually the joke is they'll make fridges and cars and houses and all that stuff too, right? Yeah. So, Dyson's also a very good example. So when you were asking me the question of let me throw some brands out there and see if it's going to elicit a certain response, Dyson for me is an amazing brand, right? It's an absolute best. Yeah. Highest quality.
Innovation.
Right?
Too.
Innovation, right? Yeah. Futurism. Tesla's like this as well.
Rethinking how we clean, and Tesla rethinking how we drive.
Do you think some of the traditional ways people are taught, branding and marketing, call it people that are going to school for this, these are outdated tactics living in the world, or outdated lessons living in the world that we're living in today?
And that's just it. Like, do you need that university degree to do this very tactile, hands-on, very kind of what I feel is very like boots on the ground type of work, right? The answer is no. right? I mean, I have an art degree, and I'm telling you, I don't use it at all to talk to people and figure out what their values are and help them build an entrepreneurial.
Not to also move into coaching mode right now, but I would push back on you and say, I think your art degree is probably the foundation for your success in branding and marketing and running a business right now, because branding and marketing, and again, I don't want to argue. This it's intuitive, it's feeling, it's visual, it's imaginative, it's everything round and nothing square, right? Now, in order to sell that and to actually execute on those types of projects and work and ensure there's consistency, you need the square, right? But you just said, I don't think I use my art degree, and I think art is one of the most important things people can learn. I think it truly deepens things like relationship, communication, connection. I think the way an artist connects with another human being in some regards is way more authentic than...
Are you sure you're not a part-time professor?
Right.
At like OCAD or something?
Right?
Are you sure you're not teaching at 3 schools a week?
Right, I lecture once in a while.
He sounds like he's supposed to be in a lecture hall.
And, I think my skill and my ability or my talent came from not taking that traditional approach, that traditional educational approach to this business. And I know we're sort of going this full circle.
I was going to
say,
you were pumping the tires of like a traditional education,
right,
and then you're talking about how successful you are without it. And I think two things can be true at the same time. Coming back to what I went to school for, yes. Did it teach me the technical skills that I absolutely use today? 100%. Did it introduce me to the software and to the design theory and design thinking? It absolutely did. And without those things, there's no way I'd be doing what I'm doing today. But did it teach me how to talk to people and how to listen first? Did it teach me how to, just be more personable, be more of a human being about things? Did it teach me how to do sales without it ever feeling salesy? Did it teach me these are all things that you learn through life and you grow. And it doesn't matter what your hard skills are. Everyone uses these softer skills, right? And everyone's going to have to develop them, right? We're all in sales. Doesn't matter what you're doing. We're all in sales, because if anyone is running a business, if the business ain't making money, you're not in business anymore.
So how important are those soft skills? I haven't heard that term soft skills
in
a long time.
Who's lecturing who?
Oh, right. That's what we used to sell.
Test is next week, buddy.
Right. That's what we used to sell back early days. We would go and sell soft skills, and it was an uphill battle selling this to corporate. You'd go to like the sales leader or the manager, be like, look, your leaders need like soft skills, interpersonal skills. And they went, no, they don't, right? Yeah. Anyway, but soft skills, how important do you think they are in today's world?
Honestly, in my world, in today's world, that's a huge question, but in my world, they're the first set of skills that I'm using right up until the very moment where I can go away, talking to a client, making them feel good, discovering what it is they want to do, how I can fit into their lives. Once we onboard them, once there's contracts signed, things like that, that's my world. Right up until that very last moment of discovery where I transition into more designy things, where I get to go away and draw and brand and all those things. I'm using those soft skills. I would consider them to be now my hard skills, right? Weaponized, sharpened tools that need to be practiced every day, right?
How do you practice them? Where did you learn these soft skills? I mean, think about the 18-year-old out there. They're about to embark on their journey to start the entrepreneur. You're in your early 30s. You're call it 10, 12 years ahead of this.
Easy for me to say, right?
Right, not easy for you to say, but what are some of the tools that you've used to learn these soft skills? Were there certain courses or books that you read that stood out, or was it just school of hard knocks? Just along the way, you figured it out.
It's a combination of things. The books part is and the readings and the absorbing knowledge like a sponge. I would do that for fun. I if I never did another branding gig ever again, I would still be. You mentioned some thought leaders like Simon Sinek. I'm sure Grant Cardone shows up. Jonathan Haidt, Jordan Peterson. I like these guys. I like a lot.
Jordan Peterson's really good.
Yeah.
Really.
Do you have his book?
Somewhere actually.
Is it around here?
Somewhere, yeah. It's on one of the bookshelves, but really smart guy around.
This is really just an advertising campaign for Dr. Jordan Peterson. But no, I would consume those things on my own, but I wouldn't say that they help talk to people. because the only thing that's going to help you get better at talking to people would be the talking to people and getting out there. And right now, the getting out there is being on Zoom pretty much a lot, right? I can't tell you how many hours since the top of this pandemic that we're in, I've pumped into Zoom, but it's a ton of just talking to people face to face. There's no, yes, it's through a screen, but there's no replacing the human, like this is how you and I did that. We jumped on a Zoom call for a half an hour just to introduce ourselves and see if we would fit into each other's lives. So there's no replacing that I want to say handshake deal, that face-to-face interaction, because people.
Well, there's no more handshakes either.
Well, there's no more handshakes, but
now there's elbows.
There's
or fist bumps, or like foots, right?
Yeah. But we still needed to talk to each other, and we needed to see each other face-to-face. And okay, so that's through a high-res screen, but that's still where I needed to start this relationship. And practicing that is really just a matter of. It's exactly that. It's practicing that. It's asking to talk to people. And it's just, hey, let's just jump in a call and let's see what each other's about. And the more you do that, the easier it becomes. And there are people who are terrified to be on screen, right? That was me like a year ago. People who won't record their own stories and put it out on their profile. People who won't show up on camera every day. People who won't talk to their audience, their fans, right? People who won't do the one-on-one interaction because they're terrified of it. The results to them are, well, they'll hate me, I'm not likable, I'm ugly, I don't like the sound of my own voice. None of that matters as long as you're yourself. And people tend to like that authenticity. They're like, oh, well, he's trying.
Yeah,
so,
they do. But you were talking about something which is practicing communicating with people. And I say this a lot to people, which is like, it's okay to reach out to someone to say, hey, I just want to talk to you without more of an ask.
Yeah.
Like, in fact, that is the ask in itself is, I don't want to pitch you or sell you or do it. I just want to connect and talk with you. And it is through the conversation and
see
through
what
the
you're
connection,
all about.
You'll start to develop and create some of those opportunities, right?
It's nice just to organically, the sales tactic is, well, just click the link in my bio and find a slot on Calendly and then I'll book you in. Oh, that feels like that's like the worst thing you can do to try to make a real authentic.
Just FYI, for everyone out there, in fact, we're going to just take this segment right now because this is going to be a post that we're going to put out there. Stop using Calendly. That's it? Calendly?
Calendly.
Yeah. Okay, we're going to take this. Stop using Calendly. It is just the worst thing. I get so aggravated when someone sends me a fucking message that says, hey, I'd love to talk to you. Here's my Calendly. Right? Click it to pick a fucking time. I'm like, you know what?
Just
You're
jump
trying
in
to
now.
get together with me. Put some effort in here.
Yeah.
Like this instant, here's a link. Come and book so I can now pitch you and sell you. Like, it's probably one of the worst services, and everyone, sorry, maybe this is like, I shouldn't be saying this over such a broad...
the lawsuit's coming imminently. Lawyer up, Greg.
Right, but,
Greg's thoughts and opinions do not reflect mine.
Maybe the tool itself is an effective tool, but people just misuse the tool tremendously.
Okay, but let's talk about that then, because you were talking about like the design skills and the tools. So like I'm going to rhyme things off that I know you know what they are. Photoshop, Illustrator,
Right.
None of those are a substitute for being a real person and talking to people and just being in their corner and actually listening to them, because every person on earth, if you give them a chance, wants to talk about themselves. Every single person wants to talk about like what kind of shitty week they had last week, or
the biggest compliment you give someone, which is you ask them to tell them a little something about yourself, about themselves.
Yeah, and then maybe there's something that interests you, and you dig a little harder on that. Right. Oh wait, where did you go 2 months ago? Oh, tell me about that, because I was looking at that. And then all of a sudden it snowballs, and all of a sudden you become a more interesting person to them. It's like, this guy's actually. We've been in here for an hour and he's been listening to everything. Now all of a sudden you become super cool, right? And it wasn't that hard. I do a lot of listening. I hardly do any talking. People just talk at me, really at me, not even to me. They talk at me, and I'm happy to listen, and I'm happy to just let them offload, and I'm happy to just let them vent. And at the end of that, maybe we continue on those conversations. Maybe a more fruitful relationship develops. Maybe not. Maybe we just stay friends, and that's okay just to stay friends. But I can always bounce ideas off them. They're always just an arm's reach, a voice note away. But I love when you meet someone for that first time. It's like, what are you doing at like 2 hours from now, 3 o'clock? Are you free? Yeah, okay, here's the Zoom link. Forget the Calendly. Here's this Zoom link so we can both hit that same link. I just love that. I love that organic. Or what are you doing right now? Can you talk to me for 15 minutes? Click, and you're in.
Or here's a basic practice. How's next Tuesday or Wednesday for you at this time?
Something like that, yeah.
They say yay, they say no. Okay, well, what about this time? Right? By the way, here's the process. Do that twice, and if you can't then figure out a time, then you ask them what times work for you in your calendar, and then you work around that.
Well, you and I went back and forth a few times before we hit a concrete date.
Yeah, but I never sent you a calendar.
No, you didn't. No, you didn't.
Say,
didn't hammer it down with that.
Right,
Didn't put that stamp on.
And actually threw someone else into the mix to say,
and we still sorted it out.
Right, let's pick some times and all that stuff. And truthfully, if I didn't have someone to actually follow up with you personally, I would have followed up with you personally.
Right, I know, because you get it. Right, you get it. We already have that connection. Right, and so that's important to you. How you treat people is important to you. So, yeah, I get it, man.
What are some of the things that you're up against right now? Where are you struggling? What are your challenges as an entrepreneur, and how are you maybe navigating them?
One thing that I keep pretty secret whenever people ask me that question, I'm going to tell you the secret today, Greg. But most of the time, like when I'm talking to my business coach, he'll say like, what things are the problems lately? What are the obstacles? And I'm telling him like ABC things. I'm not telling him like deep interpersonal things. I'm telling him, well, I haven't built that thing yet, and I know you wanted me to make the landing page for that. So like those are just like building block things that we do week to week with each other. Or family says, what are some of the things? I'm like, oh, well, I repeat the same things that I tell my business coach. I'm trying to build this, and this. It just takes time. One of the big, I guess you could say, psychological things that I'm dealing with, the more you talk about it, the more you give a voice, the more it'll be easier to deal with, and hopefully it'll go away, is this thing called imposter syndrome. I'm sure you've probably heard that around. In my world, it's, am I even worthy enough to talk to that big fish over there because I really want to work with them? And it's not just me making things for them and them paying me. No, I actually want to work with them and build something with them. Do I even have the not even the design chops? Do I have the people chops to even be worth? I haven't even been a blip on their radar before. How do I do that? How do I go and knock on their door? Like, it's like you said, how do I just start this organic thing? And there's tons of times where I'm just like, I'm just not good enough to go talk to them right now. Or, a more I guess concrete way of looking at that would be, how many times have you applied for a job only to see like a bunch of people have already applied for it? There's a bunch of skills you don't have. You're like, I'll never get it. And so you don't apply. And so you don't even apply yourself. That's called applying yourself. You do not go forward with that application because you just think you're not good enough, right? And that imposter syndrome happens to everyone, happens to the best, right? And they just think, what am I doing? Like, am I even good enough to be putting this out there? Is this even perfect enough? And that perfectionism and that imposter syndrome digs its claws in, and you can't sleep at night, and you think, what the hell am I even doing? And then you can't even see tomorrow, and then you won't even see the next few weeks, and then your 3-month or 6-month plan goes to shit because you're not confident anymore and you don't think you're good enough, right? And so luckily the bigger parts of those things haven't happened to me, but it's crept up a little bit recently in my life where, shit, am I actually good enough to go talk to that person who I know would be an awesome client, who I know I could really serve and I know I could make better, but maybe the price that I'm talking about, or maybe the particular services and quality that I'm going to deliver just isn't good enough for them, right? And so that there's a little voice that's always just right there, a little voice of doubt that's always like, you shouldn't even try that. And I'm like, why not, right? And then we come back to the why not, why shouldn't I, why can't? A year ago I wouldn't have even thought to even look at that. Now I'm actually looking at them, right? Now I'm actually entertaining the idea, can I go for that big fish, right? And so that I think is probably a very familiar feeling to a lot of entrepreneurs and the ones I talk to too. It's like, is this even good enough to launch? Is this even good enough to put out? Who's going to buy this shit, right? And do I have a solution for that? No, but it's kind of the same thing, whereas if you practice being in front of the screen enough, you will then get comfortable with your own voice and your own image. Right. And soon you could just hit record and record something. It doesn't freak you out. Cameras and microphones don't freak you out anymore. You do that enough, you put yourself in those uncomfortable positions enough, you'll unlock something in yourself. And the same thing with this imposter syndrome, although it's less black and white, there's nothing but shades of gray here. But this imposter syndrome, which attacks every single one of us, even my mentors, even my, like the people that I like have been learning from and have paid money to learn from, they talk about it all the time. Like this, like I'm launching this big thing next week. I don't think I can do it. I'm like, you're 10 years older than me and you have like a multi-million-dollar business. You don't think you can do it? How the hell would any of us do it? Do you know what I mean? And so the leaning on each other for that and seeing that other people are struggling with it, it seems to like not be so hard now. Yeah. It's like, oh, knowing I'm not alone. It's kind of like, I don't have any business talking about this, but it's kind of like depression,
Right.
where talking about it and learning, oh, other people are dealing with this.
Right.
Oh, my life isn't so much of a catastrophe anymore. Now, that's not a cure for depression, obviously.
No, and we got to be careful about minimizing things. But
Absolutely.
Look, let me just respond. First, thank you for sharing that, because it's personal. But you want to know the secret behind the imposter syndrome?
Give it to me, Greg.
Right, which is we all have it because we're conditioned to be it very early in life, all the ways from when we're a kid on the schoolyard, and someone says, "Hey, you know what?" Someone influences or puts pressure on you to act and behave in a certain way. Your parents.
Yeah.
In fact, they start saying things to you at a very young age like this. You must be nice now, okay? We got little Sally and Billy coming over, and you're going to share your toys. You're going to be nice with them. You're going to be this fake human being.
I had to prompt you with that because you weren't good enough.
Right, because I know that when little Billy gets here, he's going to be a piece of shit. And if it was their parents acting that way, I would probably also act this way, et cetera, et cetera. So we're conditioned then, and that is the imposter syndrome. And I think the truth to it is, lean into it, because in the same sense, you'll never be the expert until you've actually done it.
Yeah.
It's kind of like shooting a gun. People get really freaked out about the bang.
Oh, yeah.
Like, people lose their shit when that gun goes off. And I explain to people, and like anyone that shoots knows this, by the time you hear the bang, the bullet's gone.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. Like, there's nothing to be afraid of anymore, because, it's so far down range that it's gone. And that's the same with imposter syndrome, right? By the time you are thinking about, oh my gosh, the imposter syndrome, you're already into it. That's number one. Number two, what I heard you talk about was self-doubt. Self-doubt and how that shit can eat away at you on the inside. Second guessing yourself, questioning whether you should, questioning whether you shouldn't, getting caught up in the trying to perfect it, et cetera, et cetera. Entrepreneurship, to me, and I think one common theme that all entrepreneurs have, is they pull the trigger to take the risk. So even though they're feeling the imposter syndrome, even though that self-doubt and that insecurity and the uncertainty is kicking in, we pull the trigger. And look, we're living in very uncertain times. Human beings, part of what we need psychologically is predictability. I need to be able to predict the future. I need to be able to predict the outcome. I need certainty. This is why we like routines. This is why we follow patterns. This is why I drive the same route that I drive to the office every single day. This is why you all of a sudden become comfortable when you go
Creatures
back to
of habit.
Right. You go back. Let's say you haven't been to your old neighborhood since you grew up, and you drove around that neighborhood again. This comforting feeling would kick over. You'd be like, "Oh my God, I used to hang around here, make a right there." I know, like, it's just this predictability kicks in. And entrepreneurship is unpredictable.
Yeah.
That's it. Right. So you got to get comfortable with unpredictability.
You got to get comfortable with being uncomfortable.
You got to get comfortable with being uncomfortable. And that's part of sort of, I think, this is where the whole lesson of failure kicks in, right? You have to fail in order to learn. And I was going to ask you, what some of your failures are. And I'm sure you could go through lists of them, as we all have as entrepreneurs. But, if you were to give someone 18 years old, I asked this earlier, but we're going to go back to the 18-year-old and give them advice, or maybe someone, in their young adulthood that was just about to embark on their journey in business and entrepreneurship, what would be the top 5 do's, don'ts, tips? Maybe it could be top 3, top 2, top 10, whatever you want.
A few that come to mind are whatever it is you want to do, start it now. Start it now. Start it early. Okay? It's that hanging on to that perfectionism that you were talking about, and it's that entrepreneur shoot first, ask questions later. And I love that gun analogy, because the first time I ever shot a gun, I was visiting a friend in Detroit, and we went to a range. And
let's preface this story. Oh, you're at a gun range in Detroit.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, I wasn't just on the streets of Detroit. Like, hey man, I haven't seen you in a while. Bang. Like. Right. You're right. Context is everything, right?
Okay, right. So you're in Detroit at a gun range.
Don't edit that out. Make it sound exactly as horrible as it should sound.
Right.
I was visiting a friend just outside of Detroit, and we went to a range, and I remember holding the 9mm, and everyone around you is bang, 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 bang. And so you already know what's to come, right? The paper target goes out there, and the first time you pull it, you sober up real fast. Not that I was drunk going there, but it's a sobering experience. Yes. It's very sobering. Yes, and you're like, oh, wow, that's what you feel every little bit of society in that. Right. You're like, this is what everyone's talking about, right? This is not a toy. And then the second trigger pull, and then the third one, and then it's fun. And then all of a sudden you're like squeezing an entire magazine out of it. And then now you know what to expect. It's not so scary anymore because you've done it a little bit. right? And so to start early and start now is the best thing you can do, because there's going to be a whole bunch of stuff that you're going to try that you're going to find isn't working. Some work, so we'll repeat that again, but there's going to be a whole bunch. There's probably going to be more that didn't work for you than the little bit that did. I don't know what the actual numbers would be, but I'm sure it's like 90% is not going to work and maybe 10% that will. So the 90% that will never work, we can pivot away from that, we can adjust, we can analyze, and we can improve upon those things and maybe make them work at a later time. But even some of the biggest entrepreneurs like Simon Sinek and Gary Vee, all they do is figure stuff out all the time. There's no recipe for their success either. They've just put together stack and stack and stack of figuring things out. They just stack victories on top of each other, and some things are failures and some things are successes. So start early, because you don't know what's going to work. So start it now. And the second thing I would do, whatever it is that you're starting, make sure it's a problem that you solve. Don't just put out to the world, here's a product and I hope it makes money and I hope you buy it. Right? You have to solve a problem for a real group of people, right? And that problem should probably feel pretty familiar to you, because it's a problem that you've had in your own life and that you feel other people's pain. You're like, oh, I've been there. I know what that feels like. Maybe I can take their pain away because I know what worked for me. And so all of a sudden you're solving a problem. And so coaches do this all the time. They try to help people through their coaching. Right. I help entrepreneurs with their branding. I know what it's like. Yeah,
I was about to take you on task on that and say, okay, so what problem are you solving?
I see it a lot where people have a completely messy image. They don't really know what it is they're selling. They know they want to build something, but they're not reaching the right audience. They're not speaking the right tone of voice. Their visuals suck. You brought it back to like that visual, that look. Obviously, branding is a bit of a look.
We think in imagery. We think in
We're
stories.
Visual creatures, absolutely. And so when people don't have that, when entrepreneurs don't have that again, that imposter syndrome creeps in. It's like, I want to build a YouTube channel, but I don't have a banner. Nothing looks good. I don't know really what my branding looks like, so I can't start making these thumbnails and these covers and sell a course and all that stuff because I don't have any of that. I help people take that pain away. I help them look good. I help them look professional so that they can be proud of whatever brand they pump into the world, right? The message that they put out there to try to find their fans, right? I make sure that they can stand behind that and that they can be proud of whatever it is they put into the world.
Awesome. Very cool, man. Very, very, very cool. You kind of answered your big idea, which you're chasing, right? Which is, helping entrepreneurs have a solid image and represent what they do.
It's one person at a time, man. It's one person at a time. I don't work with like 10 or 15 people at a time. I work with 1 or 2 at a time. And we go over what it is that they're trying to do, what they're trying to bring to the world, how they're trying to leave something behind. They're trying to leave the world in a better shape than how they found it. And what does that look like? Well, in Nick's world, it looks like a wicked brand. It looks like a together brand. It looks very professional. It looks very posh. It maps to their values, right? It could be their colors, their fonts, their logo, all of that stuff coming in, mapping to their values, and then finding the audience, their ideal clients that have the same values. And now you have your tribe of loyal fans there. So
awesome, my man. Well, listen, really appreciate today's conversation. Tell the audience where they can find you.
I live mostly on Instagram and LinkedIn. So you can find me at McGrawsome Design on Instagram. And
McGrawsome, like awesome.
Yeah, like awesome.
Okay,
yeah, like,
but
so like
McGrawsome.
So yeah, so like if you were to McGrawe. So the word is McGraw and awesome combined. I should have picked an easier name so I don't have to spell it out. Why couldn't I come up with a smaller name?
Branding exercise.
Why did I have to be cursed with the last name that's actually sort of usable but totally horrible when we give it voice? Yeah. McGrawsome Design. You can find me at mcgrawsome.com on the web, and just you can come find me on LinkedIn at Nick Mcgraw.
Can I ask one question, Greg? I have a question about my thumbnail. I'm debating if I should make it, because I'm not, if I should make it. Right now I have it as an image, and I'm debating if I should have it as my face or a creative version of my face. My branding, like I'm not.
That's a great question.
There's a few questions in there, to be honest. When you said thumbnail, what did you mean by that?
Like your profile pic.
Your profile pic, right. Instagram. And where do you live? On social media? Is it just Instagram or YouTube as well?
That's what my main focus is, building on my Instagram.
Is it just Instagram you live on?
No, YouTube and everything else, but I'm...
No. What's everything else?
I have Twitter. Like my big three is Instagram, YouTube, and Twitter, but mainly everything goes to Instagram first and then everywhere else later.
And it's, what did you say you do? Video content?
Music, video content.
I can quickly answer some things for you right now, but then also we should also talk later in one of these Zoom calls that I was talking to Greg about, because I know that you have a lot more questions than what I can answer here in this afternoon, and I know I can help you like do more stuff later. Immediately what comes to my mind is that if you're trying to be a professional service, I would really strongly think about having like a corporate image. And by that, I mean a logo, right? Really think about having a logo. Now, underneath that profile pic, underneath that logo, all of your content can be the content you shoot, but then in the stories can be you showing up and saying, this is behind the scenes, everything that I'm doing here. As you can see, we got all the equipment rolling here. We cannot wait to like pump it up. You're going to have to be a bit of a personality for people because quite frankly, man, music video production is awesome. Everybody loves music videos, and like some of the music videos I've seen are crazy, and I'm sure you have too. It's a very avant-garde, very hyper-creative space to be in. It's like not boring and dull like advertising. Music video production is insanely cool, right? It's like making a fucking movie, basically. It only like how much footage goes into like a 3.5 minute song music video, like 10 hours of you recording and editing it down. It's a hard world. So like I know how much like a Star Wars movie has 6 months of footage edited down into 3 hours, right? So I think people are into the hyper creative space that it is. And so if you wanted to be the guy that not so much advertises his face, but definitely pushes it in stories, because stories are such a underrated, underused way to sell yourself. If you show up every day, every 24 hours, it deletes, right? So even if you make a mistake and you trip over your words, people have fucking forgotten about it in 5 minutes and it self-deletes, it self-destructs in 24 hours. I'm on stories every day talking about what I know. And you might think, well, I already talked about that on Monday, by now it's Wednesday. No, talk about it again because people are sheep and they forget. I can talk about logos on a Monday and by Friday talk about logos again. And people are like, oh, that's right, Nick does logos. I forgot about that. People forget what you do because we're bombarded with content all day long. So if you show up every day consistently, what was your name again? Kwame. Eventually, I'm going to say, that's fucking Kwame again. That's like 3 times this week. I keep seeing this fucking guy. And now you remain top of mind.
Just to jump in, I think to that point, your business, you still do what you're doing, right? But on your Instagram, like it's very focused towards production, creativity, music videos, even, commenting on other music videos, using those memes, sharing your behind the scenes, almost getting a video guy to come and shoot you while you're shooting the music video.
Like even Reels, like have you tapped into the power of Reels yet? So Reels are Instagram's answer to TikTok. It's their direct answer to TikTok because everything's 15 seconds at a time on TikTok, right? So Instagram said, well, how the fuck do we keep people on our platform more than TikTok, right? It surpassed Instagram, I think. It got to 2 billion much, much quicker than Instagram did. So they're like, how do we steal more people? So they invent Reels. My Reels, again, I have an audience of 1,000 people. I have nobody, because I don't focus on growth. I focus on clients. I focus on trying to make money. I don't focus on like, how do I get 20,000 followers in 9 months? I don't focus on that shit. So the argument I get is, how do introverts do this? And I'm not accusing you of being that way, but you are the behind the camera guy, not in front of the camera guy. So if you're not used to that shit, honestly, man, the answer is you're just going to have to find a little bit of extroversion. You're just going to need to be a bit more of a personality. And you don't have to be in front of the camera every day, but you kind of have to show up every day. And what does that look like? It looks like a bunch of different things. It looks like a little bit of stories. Well, stories almost every day. It doesn't have to be you smiling all the time, but it's like this is behind the scenes, adding the text on top, adding hashtags, tagging the right people, things like that. It's a full-time job, man. It's a full-time job trying to push yourself. I think you know that. Yeah, there's ways that you can humanize like my world, everyone thinks it's some fucking hyper-futuristic dystopian Photoshop branding. What is that? Like, I don't even know what that is. Everyone thinks that they can't do what I do. And I'm sure you get the same. Like, he's fucking makes music videos. He does all the editing. He does cinematography. Like, I don't know any of that. People get freaked out. It's like opening the hood of a car and it's like, Jesus, like what? Like, people get really freaked out by engines if they don't know what they're looking for and if they don't know what they're looking at. Same thing with our worlds. Like, nobody really knows what I do until the final result is put out there in the world. And no one really knows what goes into music production and video production until the final result is seen, and you get 3 million hits on YouTube, right?
Here's the good news. It's going to go out on the podcast and our selects as well. So you just might get some audience from that and some clients from it. All right. This was awesome. Let me just do another wrap up. We were about to wrap up, and as we were recording the intro, Kwame and Nick got into a conversation, which was a real life conversation. So we're going to keep it as part of this podcast. Sure. So I think it was great. Kwame, thank you for asking that question. Hope you got some good advice. Nick, thank you for sharing that. And again, if you like today's episode, don't forget to click that subscribe button and that like button and lay in a comment and share it, and we will see you next time. Hey, I'm Greg Witz. Thanks so much for coming and checking out the video. If you like that video, you're going to love the next one. So I'd highly suggest that you click this video over here. And don't forget to subscribe and share.